Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. As always, I'm your host, Joseph Arthur, PMW's Multimedia Editor. On this edition of the show, we're talking first and foremost about the Performance Marketing World Awards 2024. It's the night of nights, PMW's big extravaganza. We all get dolled up, and it's an opportunity to celebrate the best of the performance marketing industry here in the UK. The entire editorial team joins me to discuss our highlights from the evening, as well as giving some specific shout outs to some of the winners and the entries that we thought were particularly of note and particularly deserving of the commendation they received. We've got 28 winners across 28 different categories. We don't go into every single one of them, but we give you a little taste of the evening. Following that discussion with the editorial team, I was fortunate enough to attend the Retail Media Summit UK 2024, brought to you by SMG and the Path to Purchase Institute, as was my colleague and editor, Robin Langford, and we recorded a segment on the ground at the event, talking all things, as you can guess from the name of the event, retail media. We talk about the definition of the practice and how it's a very loosely defined topic, and we try and nail down exactly what retail media means. We talk about the future of retail media and whether or not that term is outdated and where it might be going in the next 12 to 18 months. And we also draw some comparisons between the state of retail media in the UK compared to the US and even APAC as well. And finally, we round out that discussion by highlighting some of the things that we were surprised with about the event. What did we learn? What did we take away that we didn't necessarily expect to heading in? Interwoven within that discussion are some clips from interviews I was fortunate enough to conduct while I was there. So you will be fortunate enough to listen to some clips from those discussions with the likes of Tesco Media, WH Smith, Boots Media Group, Very Media Group, Co-op Media Network, the Path to Purchase Institute itself, as well as SMG, and even some really interesting American and Australian-based retail media companies who had made the trip out to London especially for the event. So a shout out to Clinch Particular Audience and Cusick for their time. Stay tuned for that discussion between myself and Robin and those really fascinating clips and insights from some of the industry's thought leaders. With all that said, as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. Hello, PMW editorial team. We've got the full squad crammed into the studio here today. Thanks for joining me. We've got our editor, Robin Langford. We've got premium content editor, Jyoti Rambai. And we've got our news reporter, Reem Makari. How are we all doing?
Tired.
Yeah, a little bit hoarse, actually.
Yeah, slightly sore head as well.
And why is that? Should we tell the listeners why we're a little bit worse for weather this afternoon, we should say? We've recorded this one later in the day than perhaps we normally would.
Well, we had the PMW Awards yesterday.
We did indeed. The night of nights, the PMW Awards 2024, back for a fourth consecutive time. Is that right, Robin?
It is. It's 4 years now.
Has time flown by? Or
It's kind of crazy. It's wonderful to see the growth and to see we started in quite a small lecture theatre style thing for the awards, and now we're filling the ballroom at the Grosvenor House Hotel, which is it's lovely to see.
It was a lovely venue, and it was a really well-run evening. We had 28 winners, I believe, 28 categories. Yes, Robin's nodding, correct. I'm glad I got that one right. But it flew by, really, and the night just comes and goes in a flash. And I had the pleasure of sitting next to a couple of judges, ASOS's Elton Olahed and the DMA's Rachel Aldeghiri, and they were very impressed with the standard of entries this year. They both judged the preceding year as well, so they had a pretty good frame of reference, and they said that it was sort of the kickoff of awards season, the PMW Awards. It hits November and all of a sudden nights like these begin to fill the calendar, don't they?
Yeah, well, it is. I think end of October, beginning of November, it starts with all the award season, and that just sort of naturally flows into all the Christmas parties. So yeah.
But ours will be the best one.
Of course, of course.
Now, some highlights from the evening. We are going to discuss the award winners themselves, and we'll talk about some of our favourite entries and why those stood out to us. But what about the evening itself? Because it was a packed house, Grosvenor House. It's a big ballroom, but we filled it to the brim, and we got a lot of attendees down, and we had shout out to the Team of the Year Performix before they even won that award. They are a loud old crew, aren't they? They really get around their own entries, and you've got to respect it. But yeah, I think they get the award for the loudest in the building last night.
Definitely. I had a lot of fun during the evening. It was my first PMW Awards because I only joined in March. And it was nice going to the PMW Awards this many months in because I got to actually make some friends in the industry. So I was sitting next to Izzy Chambry, who is the founder of Be Content, which is an influencer marketing agency. She was also one of our judges. And she's so much fun. And it was very fun just sitting next to her on the table and chatting the entire night, but also getting to meet other people and getting to network. And it was just a good vibe overall.
It's a bit like Unlocked in the sense that you see our readers and you get to meet them and put some faces to people. Obviously, a lot of our commentators as well and people who've submitted thought leadership and op-eds were in attendance too. Highlights though, what were our favourite moments before things got a little too late in the night and we all hit the dance floor and enjoyed ourselves maybe a bit too much? Jyoti, why don't we start with you? What was your favourite part of the evening?
Well, I would say, I want to give a shout out to Ori Styler, who was our host. He was really funny and he gave you a little bit of grief, didn't he, Joe?
I was going to say, that was one. I got quite well acquainted with Ori by the end of the evening.
A quick warning to any comedians, don't try and talk to Joe in the audience because he's a master heckler.
Yeah.
Well, more or less, I think I was the opposite of the Performix crew. I kept getting called out for not showing enough love. And good old Ori, he was hysterical. And I think he did a great job of maintaining the momentum throughout the evening. And yeah, I was sitting front and centre and was
I think you were right in his eye line. So if you weren't going to do anything, he was definitely going to call you out on it.
I wasn't in black tie either. I was in a bright pink shirt with a navy suit and just stood out like a sore thumb. And he took advantage, to his credit. So shout out to Ori, our host for the evening.
I mean, you put it on a plate for him, didn't you?
That's the thing. As Robin said, a master heckler. I like giving comedians some fodder. And as you can all attest to, I like getting the last word and having a good old talk back any opportunity I can. Reem, what about you? What else stood out to you during the evening?
It's like I said, I think the networking and getting to see people that I have made friends with in the industry in the time that I've been working with PMW, and also just having a chance for the PMW team to just have some fun. I thought that was very great. I thought the environment of the awards was very lively. The comedian was very fun. He kept everyone entertained during the awards, and the dinner was really good. So I had a great time.
Robin, and yourself?
Yeah, I think echoing what everyone said, it's nice to see the teams all together. I think award shows more than any other sort of industry event, we get to see the teams all together that we often write about, the agencies, the in-house marketing teams. And what's special about this is they're all very enthusiastic about performance marketing, specifically within marketing. Sometimes in the trade press, performance marketing gets a bit of a battering against brand marketing and all that stuff, but it's nice to see everyone so enthusiastic about that. And my highlight was being sat next to Tom Byrne, who is now Group Strategic Development and Partnerships leader at PMG. And they took home 3 awards and a highly commended award. It's very hard sitting next to him knowing he'd won all those, trying not to give that away to him from the start. And he was a very enthusiastic fellow about in performance specifically, because he was... Seasoned listeners will recognise he worked at Periscopics back in the day. Before that became Merkle. Then he went on to Rocket Mill, and now he's with PMG. And he was a very interesting fellow. And he summed things up very nicely for anyone that talks about performance versus brand. He said, what is brand other than performance delayed? And I think that's a very interesting way of looking at the whole brand performance world, is that actually they're kind of two sides of the same coin, and branding is just that sort of delayed element of performance in that respect. So it's an interesting way of looking at it.
He certainly had a big night, and maybe next year when we see Tom again, he'll upgrade from the jeans he was wearing, and he wasn't. I wasn't the only one in Ori's firing line, and Tom Burns' jeans were, the comedian certainly took umbrage with those too.
Well, he was so proud of wearing his jeans as well.
Hey, winners are winners,
Yeah.
winners are grinners. That's what they say, and Tom Burns certainly, and the rest of his team there at PMG, they stole the show a little bit. Speaking of the award winners, why don't we dive into that and talk about the meat of the night, should we say, aside from the guinea fowl that we all enjoyed. What winners, campaigns, entries stood out to us the most? What were some of the ones that we really enjoyed and we found innovative, excellent, just the ones that we thought, wow, that was great. Glad that got the win. Super, super well deserved. Reem, why don't we start with you?
Well, I have two. So the first one is a shout out just to Group M because they won 4 awards.
Grand Prix winner
yesterday,
as
the
well.
Grand Prix, direct to consumer, retail, and integrated, and they deserved it. I thought it was a great campaign. But one of my favorites was the B2B winner, which was Brand Impact Group with Pegasystems. And the campaign basically used like a relationship therapist character that was talking about practical solutions in banking, and it combined a number of channels. So it had main video, shorter clips, so it had online ads, direct mail, AI-driven personalization, and I thought it really hit the mark in terms of performance marketing, and it was also very original and used humor and used technology. So I that to me definitely stood out, and I think they very much deserved the win.
Yeah, Group M, they had a really good night, and that was reflected in their Grand Prix victory. But as you said, that campaign, I think, utilised the right elements of performance, and I think it was a really strong submission in what was a very competitive category too. So it wasn't one that was easily taken out there. Robin, what about yourself as the editor-in-chief? What won you over the most?
Actually, I was the one that came to mind. Actually, was I chose this before the awards were actually announced, and I was goes for the best new product launch category, which was from West End to Worldwide, and that was run by the agency Charlie Oscar for a beauty brand called Act London. And as they went up on stage, I sat next to Tim Bond, who's an associate director at Ipsos, a big friend of the brand, and he nudged me and he said, "Oh, this is one of my favourites." And I was so glad he said that to me, because I was like, "Oh, excellent, Tim," because that's exactly the one I wanted to talk about today. So I was quite glad, a bit of validation. And the reason I love it is it told a great story of what performance marketing is, and it had a great backstory as well. It had a bit of everything. It had a scaling challenger brand. It had a real bit of data rigor using media mix modelling. And it had a fun element which used influencer marketing and mixing that with paid media. And basically, Act London, if you didn't know the story, is 2 performers on the West End that were in the Carole King musical, Ed Curry and Andy Coxon. They came up with this deodorant balm because you don't really think about it, but West End performers get quite sweaty. If you ever watch a show, it is phenomenal. Any sort of West End show, I'm always amazed that they do that every night, sometimes 2 times in a night. And so they came up with this great deodorant balm, and they said it's the balm that West End actors use. And they grew that through 2015, and they grew it through the pandemic. And they used TikTok, and they gave like loads of samples to actors, and then they on the West End, and they were using their TikTok videos showing the examples of how these things were working. But then Charlie Oscar did something very cleverly. They had a media mix modeling thing, which actually measured the incremental value of the influencers and the effect of that. But what's more important is it had a kind of 2-pronged strategy, which is what Tim told me about, which was that they used that to then inform their paid media strategy. They used all the information they had on the TikTok influencers to inform where they should be spending their paid media. And there's this kind of feedback loop, and it resulted in a huge amount of sales for At London. I think I've just got here 300,000 orders since launch. And this is just a really small startup beauty brand, and that shows the real value of performance as well. It's that wonderful combination of great branding idea, get it to a key audience that will sell it, use a TikTok channel, and use some really high performing, robust data, and a bit of MMM in there as well for good measure. And I think that's what performance is. It's all about helping brands scale, whether you're big or small. So a great story.
Great product as well, because those West End actors, they glisten when you see them. If you're ever fortunate enough to be in the stalls at a show, you're looking up and, oh boy, they're shiny, shiny, shiny folk, aren't they? Jyoti, did you have a favourite, something that stood out to you more than anything else?
So for me it was Total Media's group's campaign with Hiscox. So they won the Finance and Insurance Sector Award. So their campaign was called the Most Disastrous Campaign Ever. And I quite like the name. It's quite...
So do I. That's sort of it's very eye-catching immediately.
Get your attention. That's what we like.
And they played on this irony as well. In like their social posts and their out of home, one of their things was, if your client says that your work is rushed, unprofessional and negligent, Hiscox could help protect you. But the image in that is all broken up and it's not aligned, and so they're playing on this idea. And I find it quite interesting because it's the way they're using irony, it's the way they're using humour, and we've not really seen a lot of that recently. I think humour's making a comeback in advertising, and it was nice to see. And it's not just the creative side of it as well. They paired that with behavioural insights to target the ads to the right consumers, because they found that many small and medium-sized businesses were underinsured, so that's who they were targeting.
The humour one is really, really interesting because I think back to Cannes, a lot of the award winners, their humour was really one that stood out to a lot across those winners in the Lions. And last year when I was covering the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl ads, a lot of commentators were saying humour is winning audiences over. We've had some data and research come in recently that says humour is sort of the key to audiences' hearts at the moment when done right. But yet there's not many campaigns out there using it. I still think marketers and brands are a little bit reticent to dive into that well. And I suppose it's because it's so subjective. But
I think it's subjective, but it's also hard.
You've got to be funny.
One, you've got to be funny, but humour is subjective.
Yeah, I mean, you might be saying that it's there's not many funny ads. I might be saying they're trying to be funny, but they're not always. I mean, there's a lot of ads are a bit like that, aren't they? I mean,
especially British humour. I think British humour is very dry, and I know my sense of humour is very dry.
You're telling me, yeah.
I think this is why it's so great for when brands work with content creators, because then they know what the humor of their audience is. So if you're working with a content creator and you let them take control over the creativity and you just give them a brief, then they can do all of that humor on their own and they can connect with their audiences and they're doing the work for you and that works for them. But then if you're taking yourself a bit too seriously and wanting them to follow exactly your rules and what you want, then that's where you might miss the mark because your humor might not match their audience.
I think what made this one work was because it was very visual and it was quite obvious, like the humor. So I think, that's why it worked. Whereas I think if you're trying to be maybe a bit too subtle or a bit too clever, it could miss the mark.
I'm here for brands giving it a go. I think we need to give more leniency and a bit of a runway because it's so much better when brands do encompass humour a little bit within their campaigns and their overall personality. Because, I mean, Ryanair's had some absolutely brilliant ones across social media.
Surreal Cereal.
Good friends of the brand and the podcast as well. Everyone enjoys them, particularly across LinkedIn. It's a good way to spice up a platform that's otherwise a little bit drier than others. So I'm really down with brands having a crack at humour, and there's scope for it to work, but as you say, it comes with a myriad of risks, and ultimately it's very hard to pull off. You do have to know your audience. I think you make a good point there, Reem. My favourite campaign that stood out to me, this was the Purpose winner, and it was Starcom Worldwide with ASICS. Now, I'm a big runner. I'm just piques my interest anyway. For those of you listening, jump on board my fundraiser for the British Red Cross for the 2025 London Marathon. That's through Haymarket, and you can go and donate. But this isn't just a plug for the upcoming race. Robin's looking at me.
I'm expecting a link in the podcast at the bottom. I think we should actually at this point now.
Very convenient.
Maybe I will. You can, donate to a good cause with the British Red Cross, and I'll run the marathon next year. Anyway, you'll hear a lot more about this. Don't worry, I'll inundate everyone. But this campaign was for World Mental Health Day, and it was ASICS alongside media agency Starcom and Good Loop, and it was a great example of those sort of brand-orientated campaigns with a very strong performance element. And it brings the two together quite well. So the whole campaign was trying to redefine personal bests in terms of mental health rather than specific numerical achievements. And it's just trying to open the world of running up to people of all shapes and sizes and ages and backgrounds and abilities, and focus on exercise and physical activities, great for your mental health. So don't worry about your PBs. Don't worry about trying to look like anyone you're seeing across social media and all these brilliant athletes. Just go out there, go for a jog, work up a sweat, and enjoy the fruits of your labor, because you'll feel good afterwards. But the performance aspects of the campaign I thought were really innovative. They lent on YouTube specifically. They had some high impact tactics like voiceovers and YouTube takeover formats as well for the ASICS brand. And Goodloop has a very interesting don't skip to donate feature, because they were trying to raise money for the World Mental Health Day cause. And all viewers had to do was not skip the ad, and that would amount to a donation for the cause. Not only is that great for raising money, but on an engagement front, it encourages viewers to engage with the content for longer, facilitating donations, but also it's a great way to hit some of those metrics. So it was a great purpose-driven campaign, and they sort of had me from the start, and then the more I dug into it, the more impressed I was. So that one really stood out to me.
Yeah, I like that. It's like the reversal of the we'll pay you to watch ads, or we'll reward you for watching ads with this. It's giving, instead we'll make a donation for it, and that's a really nice way of growing those ad views and get that engagement, but in a different reversed way. And I think we might see more of that in the future. So good on Goodloop.
It's like reverse psychology, isn't it? It's like, because you're inclined to go, skip, as soon as that skip button's there, isn't it? So...
But you're like, I'll do my good deed for the day and spend 20 seconds watching an advert, and there we go. I might as well have donated myself. It's a really innovative way, and it's a great format. And we said, marrying those worlds of brand and performance together in a terrific way. But that rounds out our editorial chat about the awards. Is there anything anyone else wanted to raise before I let you all go? Because I know everyone's very busy, but there was a ton of stuff to talk about after what was a really great night.
Drink a lot of water before the awards.
For those of you who perhaps, I imagine we might have piqued your interest, and do get involved in the PMW Awards 2025. Submissions for that will come out at some point the next year. Across the website, it'll pop up. You'll be able to throw a submission out there. And hot tip from Reem, make sure before you attend you drink plenty of H2O. But I think it's one that, I encourage any and all listeners to get involved in, because it's a really, really good time and a great opportunity to get some reward for effort, which I don't think any marketer will say they get enough of.
Yeah, and it's a nice time to, let your hair down, speak to people in the industry. We had a good time last night.
We did.
And there were some cracking dance moves on the dance floor as well afterwards.
I think we'll leave it there before we get too deep and reveal too much. Jyoti Rambai, Reem Makari, Robin Langford, thank you very much for joining me. It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to the team being back in the studio in a few weeks' time for our end-of-year episode to round out this season of the podcast. Hello, Performance Marketing Unlocked listeners. Host Joe here, briefly interrupting your listening to tell you about a brand new event from Performance Marketing World that you can get involved with, the PMW Forum. The inaugural PMW Forum will be taking place from Wednesday, the 4th of December through until Thursday, the 5th of December of this year. And it's your opportunity to get some one-on-one time with senior performance marketers. It's a free-to-attend event that will take place overnight at Wooton House in Surrey. Topics discussed at the event will include emerging trends, the evolution of AI, the best channels to invest in, and much more. You'll be hearing from the likes of Ollie Shea at Boots, Monzo's Kat Daniel, Co-op's April Cox, as well as Robin Langford, our head honcho and esteemed editor, and many more performance experts. A big thank you to our proud partners of the 2024 PMW Forum, Quantcast, Yahoo, Dept, IDHL, and Journey Further. For any and all information on attending the event or even becoming a supplier, you can find out more by going to forum.performancemarketingworld.com, or you can go to the top of our website and click on the little ad for the forum there, and you can register your interest and find out more. Looking forward to seeing you all there for a cheeky little Christmas getaway interwoven with some invaluable networking. Now, back to the show. Robin Langford, hello, and welcome back to the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. We're recording this once again, very sort of ad hoc. It feels like we're back in Cannes, but we're not.
No, we're in an interesting sort of industrial basement in the Battersea Arts Centre, which is a lovely location.
And we are at the Battersea Arts Centre for Retail Media Summit UK 2024, brought to us by SMG and the Path to Purchase Institute. And we're out here diving into, I guess, the hot topic of the last 12 to 18 months in performance, certainly here in the UK, that being retail media.
Yeah, I think it's something that's really grown. I was here at the first Retail Media Summit last year, held by SMG, and that was the first ever retail media event in the UK, even before the IAB, in fact. But Sam Knight, in his opening intro, said that there's now 6 in the UK this year, which is a really interesting KPI for growth, how many events in the UK there are about a particular subject. I think that shows how much of an impact retail media has had on the larger marketing and advertising and retail world.
6x growth is pretty good in 12 months as well, going from one event through to 6.
Yeah. I also want to add, they started with this really inspirational video. Joe was busy working. I got to see the intro to this event. But they started with a sort of 3-minute hype intro with loads of the news and all the big stuff breaking about the way retail media has grown as an industry throughout the UK. And you'll be pleased to hear, Joe, PMW articles were flashed up on the screen showing that growth in retail media. So we're very much part of this growth story ourselves, I'm quite proud to say.
I'm very glad to hear that because honestly, I feel like I've been a part of retail media's growth within the UK just over the past 24 months, because it's certainly come thick and fast. In terms of what people are here talking about and discussing today, we've obviously got people on stage, they've been having debates, presentations, a lot of networking, and I know both you and I have been conducting our own discussions, sound bites of which you listeners can look forward to hearing a little later in the show. The term retail media carries with it a little bit of weight, and depending on who you ask, you'll get a very different response when you say, what is retail media and what does it mean to you? It's a bit like performance marketing in the sense that it seems to be pretty fluid in terms of its definition and a little bit opaque. So what do you think retail media is, Robin? Before we jump into what our guests think, should we define it ourselves?
It's really tough being a journalist in the digital sector of marketing when you have to define these rather fluid terms that are growing. But it shows that, I think the fact that it's hard to define these terms like retail media and performance marketing shows that they're so fluid and everyone's interested in them and they're growing. So I would define retail media as reaching purchase-minded consumers, but it was put quite eloquently in on stage as it's anything that is owned by a retailer, any media or any data that's owned by a retailer as well, and how those things are merged together. So retailers, media and data, and how advertisers are using that. I also say it's as much about a digital search ad on a digital site where advertisers are trying to reach someone on a purchase-minded consumer on a Tesco, as it is a bit of cardboard in your local co-op advertising, Pepsi or something like that. So it's those two things. It's very low tech and it's very high tech. It's just reaching a purchase-minded consumer at that crucial point. And are they thinking of your brand, and are they about to make that purchase at that point?
I think that's a really good way to put it. And you sort of gave a very succinct definition with a very...
I think I just gave 3 definitions, which is always...
a very long and drawn out explanation.
So always what I do is try and I sum things up in like a sentence and then I overcomplicate it at the end.
No,
that's me in a
but
nutshell.
I think we got there in the end with a very good definition of it. And I'll jump now to a couple of clips of some of the people I spoke to today on their thoughts as to what retail media is to them.
I'm Sam Knight, I'm the CEO of SMG. Retail media we define as any media that's owned or operated by the retailer or that uses the retailer's first-party data to target that media, whether that be on-site, off-site, or any kind of digital advertising.
I'm Johnny Dunkley. I am agency group head at Tesco Media and Insight platform. I think there's a lot of definitions, but for me, it has to have one of 2 elements to be considered retail media. It either has to have retailer data and insights, and in our case, Club Card. So either has to have that, or it has to be media that's placed in a retail environment, whether that's on-site or off-site. whether it's in-store. I mean, I think the big thing for us is if you can combine those two, that's really where the magic happens.
Hello, I'm Stuart Michelle, the Chief Commercial Officer for WH Smith North America. It's a good question, and I do think there are a lot of different definitions out there. To me, retail media is anything that is delivered with an obvious path to purchase in a retail outlet that can be accurately measured and fed back through the loop to the brands and the retailers.
I'm Tom Goulden. I'm from the Very Group, where I am Digital Trading, Insights and Analytics Director. And yeah, well, it's such a simple but really important question. I think I'm sure you've had a load of different answers to this through today, but actually we ask ourselves this frequently, and we try and do it through the eyes of the different stakeholders involved. So we try and think of it from a kind of brand partner perspective, that what they're looking for is ways to spend media through advertising opportunities, through retail media platforms. They want a great efficiency and return on that spend, and also they want unique kind of campaigns. We think about it from our customers' perspective. They want really interesting, unique and personalised advertisements and campaigns put in front of them. And then we also think about it from our people involved perspective. People who are working in retail media networks, what do they want it to feel like? Innovative, fun, pushing the boundaries. So that's how we'd think about it.
Robin, when talking about what retail media is, you spoke to the scope of technology and its use cases. It can be something very, very basic, but it can also be something very technical. And that brings me to why it's become so popular, particularly here in the UK more recently. The digitization of retail media, and I suppose the growth of digital and its ability to work alongside other channels. I'm thinking your favorite, digital out of home, as well as others. What are your thoughts, and have you spoken to any people today on the innovation side of retail media and where things are headed on the technology front when it comes to reaching these consumers that are ready to purchase?
Sure, yeah. I mean, retail media is another definition. It's old school shopper marketing, but it's been given a digital power up, and it's that technology that's powering all this new stuff. I think some of the innovation we've seen today has been particularly around in-store screens and digital screens appearing in store, and how that can be linked to a personalised experience. It used to be that all marketing was mass media, and then used to get posters in shops that would be still mass media, but then it got targeted down to that individual shop. And there's a point where it can be targeted down to the individual consumer based on their shopper data, and it can be all sorts of things, as well as how their behaviour in store using their shopper data cards and their transaction points can be translated to offline behaviours, and that can reach them on connected TV, it can reach them on their websites, and it can reach them on social media as well. So it's all about joining up the data points and online and offline, which is where the real magic happens in marketing now.
So it's incredibly flexible, and I guess that's one of the benefits of it. And you can kind of take retail media as a channel and run with it in any direction you like, and that's maybe why it's so popular at the moment and so potentially beneficial to brands. But it goes beyond just retail, doesn't it? There's a lot of retailers here, and obviously you'll be hearing from a lot of retailers in this podcast, but there's a lot of people who aren't retailers who are making their own media networks. And so it leads me to think, is the term retail media already outdated? You'll be hearing from some of the people I spoke to with their thoughts on this today, but it's something we've covered in our coverage lately. We had an op-ed on this on Performance Marketing World recently. 12 months from now, do you think we'll still be talking about retail media the same way, or is it just going to be media, as some people have said?
Will it be emerged into all the other media networks and advertising networks that have cropped up over the decades?
Might need a new term. You don't want to be lumped in with just media, because that can be basically anything.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was like the old school, everyone used to talk about mobile marketing, but then no one really says the term mobile marketing, because so much of your mobile is just the same as digital now. So I think it might still need a distinction. Someone called it commerce media, but that's kind of the same thing, really. We need labels in marketing, and as marketing journalists, we need to communicate ideas to people, and I think that's the same across the industry. So I think it's sticking for now, much like there's a bit of debate about performance marketing, and that in a similar term, that the things tend to merge together. I think what is going to change is the perception of retail media, and that's partly what this summit, one of the key themes of this summit is that Retail media is often seen as a bottom of the funnel performance tool, conversions, purchase-minded consumers making a purchase. But here there's been a lot of proof showing that all those kind of ads you see within a retail media environment, whether that's in-store or on an e-commerce website, is having a much higher effect higher up in the funnel. And people can see these retail media ads and networks as a creative tool as much as it is about driving brand awareness as it is driving down the funnel. So there's a whole ecosystem within retail media in itself in that respect.
Today, one of the big talking points have been the claims of its full funnel capabilities, which I think you can certainly see in practice in some respects, but to me, the real purchase driver among consumers when retail media works best is in that sort of lower funnel activations, from what I can tell, and there are these more upper funnel benefits. But I don't know, some of it's a little bit screams to me those vanity metrics, and it all comes back to measurement and how measurable are all of these things really.
I think it's more than anything, it's having a joined up creative experience with all your data and so what you see is a beautiful 30-second TV commercial or a targeted ad online is also what you see when you walk into a retailer's store, and that can work for a brand as well. They can get their branding on a retailer's website, and then they can have the right sort of display within a store as well, all matching up. And then you end with the QR code in the store, and you're doing that thing called closing the loop, which is connecting the online and offline behaviour in a nice, elegant way. So I think it is a bit much to say it's going to be completely seen as this full funnel experience. It probably will always be driven by those purchase and transaction data and that, but it's moving into a sort of fuller funnel experience, I think.
You've heard myself and Robin's thoughts on the future of retail media. Now I'm going to jump to a couple of sound bites from people I've discussed with on this exact question today. I should preface that a lot of them are retailers themselves and have a vested interest in ensuring that it does move up the funnel. But there's some interesting insights and takes, and I think people were reasonably candid with me too. So you can listen to some of those clips on the future of retail media, whether or not it is as full funnel as people think, and whether or not the term itself, retail media, is or will soon become outdated now.
Hi, I'm Georgia, so I'm the Partnership Director for Boots Media Group. Yeah, so it used to be shopper media, now it's retail media. I think honestly it'll probably move to just being media eventually, because ultimately we are able to offer everything, any type of media just fueled by the data. So it'll be interesting to see whether that does happen. So some of the key themes that we think are here to stay and probably here to continue to shape retail media, I think first probably is the transparency of measurement and standardisation. So for me that's actually really important for the sustainability of retail media, and one that we're working really closely with the likes of the IAB and ISBA to make sure that we're feeding into that framework and moving that forward for our brand partners. I think AI is here to stay, so not how it won't take people's jobs, but actually how we can make everything we do more efficient. I also think omnichannel is a key theme which is here to stay. We're definitely investing in a lot of tech to make that happen. Our Audience 360 proposition, for example, that's been over the last couple of years. We've developed that quite considerably, and it's gone from off-site, but more recently actually now we can connect on-site and in-store and develop a truly omni-channel connectivity through evaluation too.
Hi, I'm Sean from SMG, leading the North America business. A really good question. I think retail media itself as a term, as we've said, is very popular at the moment. I think the reason that we're seeing retail media in all the headlines is because there's over 200 retail media networks globally at this point. But here's the catch. Those 200 retail media networks can't survive in their silos. What we're going to be seeing in 25 is a huge amount of consolidation in retail media. And I think the only way that will happen is through partnership. We're going to start seeing retail media networks partner with different media providers. A great example of that is going on in the US at the moment between connected TV partners and retailers themselves. Expecting to see a lot more of that coming over to Europe. But I think partnership is the way forward, and for us all to grow this industry together, we should be looking at how we best partner together.
Hi, I'm Jessie Dowd. I'm the editorial director at the Pat to Purchase Institute. Yeah, so we hear a lot of sayings like retail media is just media or it's commerce media. I recently asked ChatGPT to give me a definition for commerce media, and it really focused only on digital, which is totally wrong. And so I started to get a little bit combative with ChatGPT, and I said, well, what about the physical store? And then it admitted that should be included. So I think even the bots don't fully understand the power of retail media and how it works across multiple touch points on that path to purchase. And I think really as we look towards the future, you think about the way AI is not just going to change retail media and how you can sort of measure campaign success, but AI is going to change the way that people shop with recommendation engines. And so really the whole nature of commerce is going to shift, and retail media will be really important to kind of layer on top of that new way of shopping to connect with today's shoppers.
Dean Harris, Head of Co-op Media Network. I think the term retail media will linger for a while. We all thought digital media and digital advertising would be just advertising, so I think it'll be there just to reference and make it easier what we're talking about and who's involved in the process. But I think it'll be much more integrated into the media and advertising ecosystem. At the minute, it's kind of a separate package, and it needs separate treatment by brands and by media agencies. So I think the integration of it into the media world will be much more consistent in the future.
My name is James Taylor. I'm the founder and CEO of Particular Audience. I think anywhere you can actually leverage that retailer first-party data. Ultimately, we're biased. We're an on-site machine learning software platform. So, we really love the bottom of the funnel, the conversion driving, the cross-sell, the search placement automation. But frankly, a lot of those insights can access consumers earlier in the journey. So as digitalization goes in store and expands, we're going to see a lot more awareness building activities as well as that consideration and then the conversion aspects of the funnel.
Robin, before I let you go, because I know you've got an interview to jump to, as do I actually, we're against a ticking clock. It seems like the golden quarter and doing anything in the beginning of Q4 is the most valuable thing. But I wanted to round out by just any final thoughts on an interesting topic you've come up with today that might have surprised you, something that you didn't think you were going to be talking about with, or something that it could even just be a little bit of an opinion or a hot take that you thought, oh, that's interesting and I haven't heard that before. What's new here today that you've learned you haven't thought about or heard previously?
You put me on the spot there, Joe. That's
Intentionally put him on the spot there, folks. So you're hearing this as raw, as real as possible.
And what I would say is there's been what I haven't heard. There's been a bit of an absence of discussion about the big player in the room, which is Amazon. But that's because I think a lot of these retailers are pitching themselves against Amazon in that respect. But I think it's also saying that they're finding confidence to create these networks on their own, and some of these retailers are doing fantastic things that perhaps Amazon couldn't do purely because they've got that in-store presence.
I'm glad you went there, because a few of the people I've chatted with today are actually ex-Amazon and have pivoted into their new roles with new people and setting up these retail media networks. From what I can gather is a lot of people were either in that search or e-commerce space and have now gone out into retailers to help them set up their media networks. And maybe some of the reticence to sort of mention that the A word, Amazon, the other A word that hasn't come up as much as I thought was AI, although some of our people, as you would have heard throughout this episode, have touched on it, particularly when looking forward to the future, and certainly on the ad tech side of things, which is really where AI dominates. But on Amazon, people are trying to look beyond it, I think, because they are the dominant retailer in the e-commerce space, and they really set the groundwork and laid the foundations of retail media and what it can be. But looking at what it is and what it will become, I think people are trying to go beyond Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Touching on the boom in popularity for retail media, particularly in the UK, but also I got a couple of folks to draw some comparisons between the UK and the US. You can hear those clips now and some hot takes from a few of the folks I've spoken to today.
My name is Taylor West. I'm the global head of sales and CX for Clinch. The US market is more mature. So usually in the UK, because of the market, They really embrace technology and are usually a little bit faster, what I've seen in the US. But in this case, I think the US is much more mature and advanced, and that's from advancements. Obviously, Amazon was the first one to really get into it, then Walmart was a fast follow. Now you have Kroger, you have Albertsons, and a number of others that have really invested heavily building out their first party data set and then being able to monetize that in an omni-channel fashion. They're also advancing both from a self-service but as well as managed service standpoint. And I see that the UK retailers are just starting to embrace some of the concepts and lay the foundation to build something like what we have in the US.
Nick Larkins, I'm one of the co-founders and chief product officers at Cusick. Yeah, I think that when you're comparing the different markets, they're progressed in different areas. So in the US, a lot of the on-site, off-site kind of capabilities are probably world leading. And then back home in Australia, we've pretty progressed on the in-store side alongside adopting quite aggressively the technologies that enable on-site and off-site. And then here in the UK, I think that they've done an amazing job of being able to create omni-channel kind of capabilities that allow you to measure across all these channels and leverage the latest and greatest in technology.
Well, Robin, we're short of time here, and I better let you go to prepare for your final interviews of the day. But thank you very much for joining us on this very special PMW Unlocked, back out in the wild episode of the Unlocked podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Joe.
And that concludes this episode of the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. A big thank you to my lovely editorial team, Jyoti Rambai, Reem Makari and Robin Langford, for joining me at the beginning of the episode to regale you all with tales from the night that was the PMW Awards 2024. For those of you listening who were there, I hope you enjoyed the evening and will look back on it fondly. And for those of you who weren't there, perhaps we've enticed you to make your submissions for the awards next year and make sure you get on down and don't miss out on a great event. And ultimately, a lot of great work has been done over the past 12 months in the performance marketing industry in the UK and beyond. So seeing those folks who did such good work get the commendation they deserved was a joy and a pleasure. Of course, as well, a big thank you to the Path to Purchase Institute and SMG for letting myself and Robin crash the Retail Media Summit UK 2024 and hassle all of your attendees with our microphones. And of course, a big thank you to those attendees who took the time to speak with me and contribute to this episode of the show. Retail media is at the best of times a bit of a tricky topic for people to grasp, but I thought we got some really salient insights and hot takes on the biggest conundrums and topics currently percolating within the world of retail media. So I hope you all enjoyed listening to those. I certainly enjoyed speaking with those experts. And you know what's coming. As always, I would be remiss if I didn't thank you, the loyal listener, for tuning in each and every fortnight. As you do, don't forget, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice. We are also on LinkedIn, posting regularly. We're putting out clips from episodes. We're putting out articles. We're sharing insights from interviews we've done with the industry. So we appreciate all the love we can get on socials. That's on LinkedIn. And we're also building out our base across YouTube and TikTok. So go show us some love over there as well. With that said, I will be back, as always, in a fortnight's time with another episode of the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. But in the meantime, have an amazing week, and you'll be hearing from me again shortly. Bye for now.